Today we're going to discuss probability. This is going to be just simple probability. It can get much more complicated than this, but we'll be talking about simple one event probability. As you can see from the screen, we have different possibilities of something occurring. So I have a few examples. One is rolling the number 14 on a set of die. That is something that's called impossible, so it has a 0 probability. If I go to the middle, I have a coin, and if I want the probability of tossing a head, I will have a 1/2 probability, which is an even chance. And the last example that I have is that the sun will rise, and that will be a certain probability, maybe not tomorrow, but it will be in the future. So we could have a probability going from certainty to impossibility. How likely something is actually what the probability is. Sometimes it's called chance. We can express our probabilities as fractions, as decimals, or as percents. Sometimes they will be put on a scale, but that's more rare. Usually we will express them as fractions or decimals. Probability is the chance of how likely something will happen. For example, if I toss a coin, how likely is it that you will get a 1/2 or a heads on the roll of the toss of the coin? Or if I rolled a die, what would be the probability of getting a 1 to come up? If something has a low probability, it is unlikely to happen. The lowest probability is a 0, and that is if something is not going to happen. A high probability is something that will happen, and that is a 1. So here's an example of some different probabilities. So this is a spinner, and if we do one spin of the spinner, what's the chance that you're going to get an odd number? Well, on the spinner, you have a 3 and a 5, which are 2 odd numbers out of the 4 possibilities. So that means the probability is 2 out of 4, or 1/2, and that is an even chance. If I go to the probability of getting a 2 on the spinner, that is impossible. So the probability of that is 0. And if I want to try the probability of getting a number less than 10, that would be every number on the spinner. So that would be 4 chances out of 4, which is a 1, and that is called certain probability. So in our language of probability, we can say that something is certain. The probability of that will be a 1. Very likely will have a high probability, which means a high fraction. Even chance means 1 out of 2 or 50%. Not likely, that will be a low probability or low percentage, and impossible will be a 0. So some examples: the sun will be rising tomorrow. It will rise even though we might not see it, so that is a certain probability. An even chance, getting a tail when you toss a coin, that's 1 chance out of 2. Something that's not likely, rolling a 6 on a die. So again, that's 1 chance out of 6, so that's not very likely. And impossible, rolling an 8 on a die, that is unlikely, and you can't really do it, so you would get a 0 probability. For the example of the spinner, if I look at this spin, every one of those divisions has an equally likely chance. I have the numbers from 1 to 6. So the chance of getting a 1 would be 1 out of 6. The chance of getting a 2 would be 1 out of 6. The chance of getting a 3 would be 1 out of 6. A number that would be impossible to spin would be an 8 or a 0 or a 10. Another example is if I have these bags of marbles. Notice there's different colored marbles in there. There's a striped marble, there's a spotty marble, a white marble, or a gray marble, and there's different amounts of them. The most likely marble to pull out, if you look at that, there are 5 marbles that are white. So the white marble would be the most likely to pull out. The least likely actually would be the dotted one or the spotty one, because there's only 1 of them. So again, just to reiterate, for the spinner, any number that's less than 1 or greater than 6 would be impossible. And for the marbles, it would be white, because there are more white marbles than any other color. Probabilities are usually done as fractions. So the probability of getting tails when you toss a coin is 1 chance in 2, or 1/2. The probability of getting 3 when you roll a die, again, there's only 1 3 on a die, so that's also 1 chance, but it's 1 in 6, so you would call it 1/6. So a few more examples. What's the probability of rolling a 4 on a die? Well, there's only 1 4, so that's 1 chance out of 6. What's the probability of rolling an odd number? Now, odd numbers are numbers that are not divisible by 2. So on a die, you would have a 1, a 3, and a 5. So that would be 3 chances out of 6 of getting an odd, and at the same time, 3 chances out of 6 of getting an even. And then the last example, if I have a bag that contains 7 buttons, 3 of them are green, what's the probability of getting a green? Well, if you have 3 chances out of the 7 buttons, your probability would be 3 over 7. And then the last thing, what if I had a bag that contained 3 red and 5 green marbles? The probability of now getting a red, so there are 3 red and there are 5 green, but 3 red out of the total of 8 would be 3 over 8. So again, to reiterate, the probability of rolling a 4 was 1/6. The probability of rolling an odd number was 3 out of 6, or a half. The bag containing the marbles, 3 out of 7. And then the bag containing the red and green marbles, 3 out of 8. You can also write your probabilities as decimals or percentages. So instead of writing a 1/2, you could write it as a 0.5 or 5/10, or you could change it to a decimal, which is 50%. Same thing with the probability of 3 over 4. You can also write it as 0.75 or 75%. So what is a probability again? What's the probability of getting a head when you toss a coin? So again, when you toss a coin, you would get 1 chance out of 2, 1/2. Something that has an even chance of probability, 1/2 is the fraction. You also would call that 0.5 or 50%. Again, if you have 5 buttons that are all blue, the probability of getting a red is 0, because you cannot pick a red when there are all buttons that are blue. And the last one, a bag containing 4 white buttons, how many black buttons must be added so that there is an even chance of picking a white button? If they want it to be an even chance, you have to have the exact same number of white and black. So you must have to add 4 black. So again, to reiterate that, the probability for tossing a head, 0.5. Again, that can be written as 1/2 or 50%. The probability that something has an even chance, that's called 50%. Again, if you have 5 buttons in the bag that are blue, you have 0 chance of getting a red. And the last problem, if I want to make even odds, so that I would get for a white button, I have to add 4 black so that there would be an even number. So here's an example if I have a die. If I want to throw an even number on the die. So first of all, I would look at the total number of results, and the total results in number 1 to get a die, you can have 6 different things that happen. So you can get a 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, a 5, or a 6. That is actually called the sample space, and it is a list of all the possible outcomes. All right, we're interested only in getting an even number. So even numbers out of that group are 2, 4, and 6, which means I would be interested in throwing only those numbers. So that's 3 possibilities that are success, and there were 6 in the total set. So the probability of getting an even number on a die would be 3 out of 6. And again, we can also look at probability scales. We saw that on the beginning slide. These are some different ones. The sun will rise tomorrow. Okay, that would be certain. Number 2, you will live to be 500. Impossible. Number 3, you'll spin a coin and get a head. That's an even chance. Okay, 4, you will see a bus on your way home. Probably. So likely, number 4. And number 5, you will see an ambulance. Probably unlikely. So again, you can kind of put them on a scale to see which is the most likely and which is the least likely. The last slide I have is some useful information. Some people are not that familiar with cards. Cards in the deck of 52 cards are used quite a bit. So I have a slide that shows that. You have 4 suits in a deck. 2 are black, clubs and spades. 2 are red, diamonds and hearts. In each suit, you have 13 cards, and they go from ace through 2 through 9, and then 10, jack, queen, and king. The jack, queen, and king are considered face cards, so sometimes they will be talking about face cards. If you're working on dice, 1 die has the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So if you roll 1 die, you would have 6 possible outcomes. If you actually toss 2 die, you will have 36 possible outcomes, because you have to consider each base. So you could have a 1 and a 1, a 1 and a 2, a 1 and a 3, a 1 and a 4, etc. And there would actually be 36 possible outcomes. All right, hopefully this was a little bit of information on learning how to use probability.